No spin, just the facts, the questions, the answers. Chris Lynch and Canterbury Mornings on NewstalkZB 100.1 FM.
NewstalkZB, Canterbury Mornings with Chris Lynch. It is 18 past 11. If news breaks, you'll hear it here first on NewstalkZB. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome into the studio a Swedish crime writing sensation and #1 international bestseller, Camilla Läckberg. She sold over 12 million books and probably more than that. And what I find interesting is she says she's most interested in how horrible people can be. And I hope you're not going to take notes for this interview. And you join me now live in the studio. Nice to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
Congratulations on your success. You have worked hard to get where you are. You are not an overnight success, so congratulations.
Thank you. Well, it's been fun also.
It has been fun, but no doubt it's been exhausting because you are now an internationally acclaimed author, but you're also on the speaking circuit too, to a certain degree. You have to do the whole promotion thing. You have travelled many parts of the world, haven't you?
Well, my books are published in over 50 countries, so I do a lot of promotion abroad, and I love it, but the challenge is to also find time to write, so that's kind of like the balance I'm struggling to find.
So how do you find time to write then if you're travelling all the time, you're a working mum, you've got 3 kids?
Yeah.
How the hell do you fit in a book?
Well, I don't do much coffee with friends or don't go to the cinema much or things like that. So I kind of have to give up on a lot of those kind of pleasures. But I love my job, so it's an easy priority for me.
Isn't it great to be able to have a job where you can say, I love it? Therefore, I'd imagine when you're writing, it doesn't really feel like much work.
It depends on which day. I mean, sometimes it comes easier and sometimes I really have to glue my butt to the chair. But
Discipline.
Discipline,
it's hard,
that's the key. That's the key. It's not always about, feeling inspired and enjoying it. It's a job, and sometimes it really feels like going to the office. But it's a great job most of the time.
You are interested in how horrible people can be, and I suppose that's because you are a crime writer. In your view, then, how horrible can the human race be? Because you must look to a lot of different sources of inspiration to find a good story.
Well, I do. I've always been interested in crimes and crime psychology. So I've always read a lot of true crime books and always read the papers about interesting crime stories. And I do find that reality often trumps any kind of horrible fiction that I can come up with. And
it's probably because there's a storyline that goes with every crime story. I mean, that's why we're so interested as journalists about various crime stories that happen in New Zealand, because there's the different layers, the relationships between victim and offender.
Well, I mean, you have a very interesting murder story here in New Zealand that I've read about many, many times, and I've seen the movie Heavenly Creatures as well, the Peter Jackson movie. And it is fascinating how it builds up to a crime. It doesn't happen overnight. People don't just, bludgeon someone to death out of thin air. There's a relationship, there's building up to it, and it's often very complicated, and I find it's fascinating.
Do you think in Heavenly Creatures, the 2 main characters, were they lovers or obsessed with each other?
Well, my take on it is that they probably were in love with each other, that there was a very, very strong attraction. That's the way I've interpreted it. I do think, I don't know if there was a sexual relationship or anything like that. It's quite been a while also since I saw the movie or read about the case. But I think there was a strong feeling and a strong attraction, and love can make us do very, very horrible things.
Speaking from experience. Not murder, though, just to be quite clear about that. I want to ask you about the way you go about writing your books, because you are truly interested in the dynamics of the relationships first. And as you say with Heavenly Creatures, the crime came second. That wasn't the driving edge of the book initially. For you, it's the same, isn't it? You try and think of the relationships first, and then the crime happens organically.
Yeah, because I'm not... the way the murder is committed, for example, is not very interesting to me. I never make it extra bloody or something just for the effect. I really don't care how the murder is committed. I'm much more interested in why, and that's also why I often go back to a historical place when I write my books. I often go back in time because I really want to explain why the murder happened. And to do that, you often have to go back in time.
How would you describe your books to, say, somebody who hasn't read them before?
What I would say makes my books stand out a bit from the other crime novels out there is that I have a very heavy part that is focusing on the lives of the main characters. So I have an extraordinary drama, which is a crime mystery, but I also have an ordinary drama where you follow my characters through their everyday lives, and it's a life that most people can relate to. It's a drama of falling in love, of getting married, of getting along with mother-in-laws, of having children. And I think that's why people love the books all over the world, because they can actually relate to this Swedish couple from this Swedish small town.
Where you actually were born. A lot of
Yes.
your books are based on the location of your birthplace, your
And my mother
hometown.
still lives there.
Well, I hope she's not a murderer. Why is that, though? Is that because you find it easy to relate and you can think in your head a storyline that would be powerful to you from your own hometown? Is just because what you know?
Yeah, it is. I think because I'm a bit lazy, and it's very easy to write about something you know about. So I know my birthplace so well, so it's easy for me to write about it. But I also find a small town very intriguing. And I have ever since I was 7 and started reading my first Miss Marple mysteries and just loved the stories about St. Mary Mead. So I do think a small town is much more interesting than a big city. The psychology of it
The
is
dynamics
so
of
much
the
more
humans.
intriguing. Yes.
Did you ever set out to create some books that had, where the characters would evolve throughout different books?
No, I decided already from the start that I wanted to write a series because I love myself to read a series when there's a new book coming out.
Yeah.
And also it gives you the opportunity to really develop the characters over a long period of time, not just in one book. So I've kind of grown with my characters over the last 10 years, and they have evolved through the last 10 years.
You often hear of writers that had interesting jobs prior to becoming an author. You were once an economist.
I'm not quite sure that's an interesting job, but it was a different job than the one I have now.
Well, perhaps that's a fair comment, really. Economist sounds really boring to me. Is that because you turned to crime writing because you want to kill some of your boring workmates who worked in finance?
Well, I've probably killed some people that I dislike through the books, yes.
Really?
Yes.
Are you serious?
Well, I am serious. It's a great way to get your aggressions out on people. I do camouflage it though, but I have killed some people I dislike. So you better be nice to me.
What a good idea!
You better be really nice.
Otherwise, I might hear in your latest book this blonde person was an absolute fool. He deserved a stake in his heart. I read somewhere that correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 1999, you said the greatest Christmas present you were given was a writer's course in crime writing.
Yeah.
Who gave you that?
It was my now ex-husband, my then husband, and my mother who gave it to me. And it changed my life.
I was going to say, you must have pretty vivid memories of that course. How long did it last for?
It was 3 weekends with a month apart, and I actually started writing my first book, The Ice Princess, during that course as an assignment.
And look at it now.
I mean, who knew?
Well, did you have an inkling though in your heart that you thought you're up to this?
No. I mean, my goal was to be able to first publish one book, and then my second goal was to be able to support myself, but on writing, but on a much smaller scale was how my dream was in my head. So I could never have imagined anything like this, never.
No doubt you're often inundated with requests for advice on how to write crime.
Yeah.
Do you get sick of that?
No, because I kind of like to pay it forward because I'm so absolutely grateful that I've been able to fulfill this dream and live my dream of being a writer, so I can fully understand other people who dream about it, and I like to pay it forward.
I want to ask you about the translations of your books in 50 countries, many different languages. Do you believe that different countries interpret your storylines slightly different? I mean, choosing a translator, or you have to have confidence and trust in the various international publishers that they're going to deliver a storyline that's equal to the original. Was that a nervous process at first, having your books translated to other languages?
Well, I'm a control freak, so that is a very...
So you must have been really nervous then.
And what really worries me is because I get a copy of every foreign edition sent to my house, and it is a bit nerve-wracking when you get like the Finnish copy and it's like 250 pages, and then I get the Polish copy and it's like 500 pages of the same book, and I'm like, what happened to the other 250 pages?
Have they cut out a couple of chapters? Did they get
What
bored?
did they leave out? Yeah. So, but I just have to trust the translators and trust that they're doing a great job with my books.
And they must be, because you are an absolute success. Are you surprised by your success?
Yes, I am. When I started writing, I was expecting that only my mother would read my books, so it is a big surprise to me.
What does your mother think of them?
She likes them, but she's my mother, so what else can she say?
Well, that's true. Your eldest child is how old?
He's 12.
So he's a bit too young to read this kind of stuff, but he's into Lord of the Rings.
Yes, he just finished the Hunger Games trilogy, and now he's reading Lord of the Rings, so I think he's working himself up to my books. But they've seen the movies, though.
Do you want him to read your books?
Yes, of course I do.
What age is appropriate then, do you think, for him? When you're going to say, all right, you can read this now. We'll give you a go.
They could read them now if they want to. I'm not the censoring kind of mother. My daughter and I, she's 10. We're just now... we have a horror movie club together, so we're watching like basically every horror movie that's ever been made. Her favorite is The Ring, so I'm not a very protective mother that way.
I think I've seen that one, yes.
It's great.
But you also, though, you've probably got a rather in-depth knowledge of forensic science.
I do. I've read about forensics ever since I was little. I prescribed to forensic magazines. And
do you?
Yes, I do.
So you must be surprised.
I'm quite nerdy, actually.
That's okay. So you must be quite surprised by the amazing technology we're seeing now with DNA and the other new scientific methods that are being introduced to catch criminals who committed crimes 20, 30 years ago. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But the problem is that the criminals are kind of catching up on it as well. So they're being more careful about, DNA and things like that. But, still a lot of criminals are quite stupid. So that helps.
Does it help your writing?
It does, and it also helped me. I used to be married to a police officer, so that was very good for research.
I bet.
Yes.
And you used the term used to. Did he get too freaked out by your stories?
Well, he's my second ex-husband, but we're still friends, so I can still ask him police questions.
I just want to briefly touch on the advice you would give budding crime writers. What would be the one bit of advice you would give them?
The one piece of advice that I would give him is to glue your butt to the chair, because don't wait for inspiration. Inspiration is a myth. It's all about sitting down every day in front of the computer and write. And some days you will produce 1 page, some day we will produce 10 pages, but you have to sit in front of the computer every day. Regard it as going to the office.
The stories you write, do they evolve as you sit down on the chair in front of the computer, or do you sometimes you'll be driving along and think, gee, that's a good idea, and you'll scribble it down to remind yourself to start typing later? How does it work?
Both, actually. Most of it comes when I sit in front of the computer, but I could be standing in line in the grocery store and like, oh, Patrick needs to find out this, or I'm going to have a character like this, and then I write about it later when I get back home.
Really nice talking with you.
Nice having me.
By the way, are you working on anything at the moment?
Yes, I'm writing on my 9th book, The Lion Tamer.
Now, you got a laptop, or are you into the old-fashioned way? What do you do?
Oh, goodness, I've got a laptop. I couldn't write my own handwriting.
Now, this is interesting. Is it a laptop, or is it a blimmin' thing? Are we talking the traditional thing that you fold out and open and start typing?
Yeah, it's a Mac. Okay. It's a notebook
it's a flash
kind of thing.
Mac.
And I'm writing here in New Zealand as well. In my hotel room.
Okay, it's good to know these things if I want to take up writing. Really appreciate your time. Camilla Läckberg, everybody.